Alright, so hear me out. What if that wasn't Anakin at the end of episode 4 of the Ahsoka show? What if it was the son, as in the father, son, and daughter of the Mortis Gods? You know, the Mortis arc in the Clone Wars, which if you haven't watched it, go check it out. Very awesome arc. Has been talked about a lot over the last couple of days because Ahsoka technically dies and then is brought back to life through the essence of the daughter and the father, son, and daughter of the Mortis Gods. And one thing that we see during that arc is the son almost trying to get Anakin to join him at one point. He's trying to kill them. There's this whole thing with the son. But because Ahsoka is basically the daughter now, kind of people are saying that now it's the son communicating with Ahsoka, or communicating with the daughter through Ahsoka. We of course at the end of episode 4 last night got Anakin Skywalker popping up in the world between worlds after Ahsoka Tano ended up there. And listen, take nothing away, it was a beautiful scene, and whether that ends up being actually Anakin or not, I do think we will get some kind of Force Ghost, real Anakin if you will, at some point in this show, possibly next week, whatever that may be. But there is some solid evidence to say that maybe that wasn't actually Anakin. One thing that people pointed out was that Darth Vader's theme music started playing as they cut to the credits of last night's episode, which I didn't even catch at first during my reactions. I had to go back and listen, but yeah, they for some reason played Darth Vader's theme music, so people were kind of saying, well, maybe it's technically Darth Vader, not Anakin Skywalker, but I don't really see that. So to me, there's kind of two paths to speculate on here, and that it is actually the son of the Mortis Gods, who is basically a master of illusions. We literally saw this at one point, I think it's when they're leaving Mortis in Clone Wars. Anakin like wakes up from like a dream or a nightmare, or is like in the middle of one, and he sees himself, Anakin, like across like into some water and some grass. I think it's been a while since I watched it, but it turns out what he's seeing is actually just the sun, and he kind of melts up into the sun, kind of revealing himself, if you will, and trying to get Anakin to join him. So like it's technically happened before in a sense, and maybe we're about to get a version of that in the world between worlds, with the son unveiling himself and trying to get the daughter to join him in whatever actions. And it makes sense why this is happening in the world between worlds, because even I feel like the world between worlds is one of those things that we only know so much of, but like we do know that that place is basically governed by said gods, by the father, son, and daughter in a sense. I mean, literally the key to opening the WBW, it's a lot to say world between worlds over and over again, but literally the key to opening it is the father, son, and daughter. And the daughter technically being Ahsoka, that is why when she died or whatever she did, went to the world between worlds. And like another thing that happens during that arc in the Clone Wars is that we see the father put the freaking, I don't even know what it was, we're just gonna call it a knife, in his gullet, and then that basically distracts the son, and then Anakin comes up and kills the son behind him. And just because he might have died, he's a god, so like, is he really dead? And then we also saw in Rebels the son on the mural move a little bit, so like, I don't think the son is technically dead. And you know, another interesting thing as to why this theory could make a lot of sense is, of course, we have all been speculating why Sam Witwer was credited in the credits to some of the recent episodes. We all thought it had something to do with Marok, but as we saw last night, Marok absolutely vaporizing into dust, so we're probably gonna get, I'm sure we're gonna get some more backstory on what he is, who he is, and all that stuff. And maybe Sam did voice Marok in the couple lines that he had, but maybe Sam Witwer is also involved in the son, because as you know, he voices the son in the Clone Wars. And I really don't know if it would look visually correct, but I mean, hell, maybe Sam Witwer is actually gonna play the son if he pops up in this show, or at the very least, we'll just voice him, which I'll be all fine with. And listen, what the son of the Mortis Gods is trying to connect with Ahsoka with and trying to get her to do, let's just say, I don't know, but there's definitely some evidence there. And there's another thing from the first episode of the Ahsoka show, when we first see her down in that temple and she's kind of feeling and hearing like in that pillar. People originally thought it was Darth Maul, but it was actually the son uttering some lines from the Clone Wars asking, is he the chosen one? And then whatever, I'm sure everyone's seen the clip by now, but it was actually the son. So now that's like multiple son references we have in the Ahsoka show in just 4 episodes. And maybe that explains why Anakin doesn't really look like a Force ghost when we see him. Now, there is another theory that basically says that the world between worlds is kind of like where Jedi go when they die, and the reason they pop up as that blue essence in the real world is because they're not fully projecting themselves into the real world, if you will. When they're in the world between worlds, they are whole. That's where they go when they die. What we see in the real world, like when we see Anakin in Return of the Jedi, is basically a projection. It's like a hologram, basically, to explain it. So maybe even though the son theory has some evidence behind it, maybe it is still technically Anakin, which I'm all for, and I'm very interested to see what's going to happen next week, because either we're going to start off, we're going to get a little bit of interaction, maybe Ahsoka's going to feel a weird vibe, and then the Anakin's going to melt into the sun like how we saw in the Clone Wars in that one scene that I discussed, or maybe something that we have been discussing for months, literally, when it comes to rumors for the Ahsoka show, and that we talked about briefly last night, is that Anakin and Ahsoka are basically going to take a walk in the world between worlds, looking through portals. Anakin's going to let Ahsoka basically realize that there's nothing she could have done. He would have turned either way. We're going to get this very emotional scene between them. And then a lot of people are speculating that Ahsoka, through this experience, is basically going to come back as Ahsoka the White. And what we saw at the end of episode 2, which was kind of parallel to what we saw at the end of Rebels, and of course in the live action Ahsoka episode 2 is kind of Ahsoka the Grey, let's call her. Maybe things are going to pick up as Ahsoka re-enters the real world through the world between worlds as Ahsoka the White, as we saw her in Rebels. Does that make sense? So even though it would kind of be like backtracking in a sense of the last few episodes, it would be Ahsoka coming back a more pure form, a more just literally godlike figure in Star Wars, and then kicking off from there and learning her lessons and training Sabine properly, and then going on to go find Thrawn, make sure the map doesn't get destroyed, whatever it may be. Or there's the theory that Ahsoka, because she has that daughter's essence in her, maybe she technically just got knocked out, and in her mind she's in the world between worlds. I don't really buy into this thing. I don't think it makes the most sense, but because she's been there before, because she has that essence in her, she's seeing basically the world between worlds in her mind, and everything she saw with Anakin popping up really isn't actually happening in the actual world between worlds. I don't even know if that makes sense, but like, I don't really buy into that anyway. I think it's more likely just what we talked about with Anakin and the reasons that he's not Force Ghost Blue in the world between worlds, because the Force, or I should say the world between worlds, is actually where the Jedi go when they die, and their projection into the real world is that hologram like blue figure, or it is the direction of it's actually the son of the father, son, and daughter of the Mortis Gods. What that leads to, I have no idea, but either way, whether this was technically Anakin or not, I do believe Anakin will actually still show up in his true form, maybe as a Force Ghost, whatever it may be, at some point in this show. I mean, there is the lines from the trailer where Anakin's literally saying, like, I believe in you, Ahsoka, and whatever he said, so like, we're obviously going to get more. Next week is going to be a crazy episode regardless, and if I had to make a prediction, what I think the more realistic option is, I'll probably just say that it was Anakin, because like, even though there's evidence pointing to the Mortis son, I just feel like that's some real deep Star Wars lore, and if anyone would do it, it's Dave Filoni, but I'm just like, would he really go that deep and that hardcore in this live action show that a lot of casuals and normies might not get? I don't know, but like, remains to be seen, man. Next week is going to be crazy. Leave your thoughts down below in the comments, and go check out Star Wars Sith, his video that he made on this same idea. Actually got the idea from him, so credit to Tony. I took his idea, credit to him. Go check out his video. Whenever it goes up, I'll link it down below in the description. Leave your prediction down below. What do you think is going to happen next week with the world between worlds and Anakin and Ahsoka? Be sure to like and subscribe as well, and go follow me across all social medias at NoNation Vlogs, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.
This is Rogue 2. This is Rogue 2. Commander Skywalker, do you copy? This is Rogue 2.